slowly, deliberately, as if it had known all along that I was there and was simply choosing this moment, this precise and terrible moment, to acknowledge me. I want to be honest about what I felt in that instant, because I think it matters. I've heard people describe fear as something that hits all at once like a wave. That's not what I felt. What I felt was more like the floor dropping away beneath me in stages. First the disorientation, then the cold spreading from my center outward, then the crystalline, horrible clarity that comes when your brain finally accepts that what you're seeing is real. That whatever this is, it is here, and it is aware of you. 8 yards. I was 8 yards away when it fully turned its head toward me, and I saw its eyes. Not eyes the way you and I have eyes. Not even eyes the way an animal has eyes, catching light and shining back. These were self-luminous. They glowed from within, a deep and angry crimson, not the bright cherry red of an lead or tail light, but something organic and ancient, the color of iron pulled screaming from a blacksmith's forge, that deep pulsating red-orange that means something is genuinely, searingly hot. 2 burning points in the absolute blackness, looking at me, looking at my car, regarding me with something I couldn't name, not hunger, not rage, not curiosity, something I had no framework to understand. I realized, dimly, that I was rolling up my window with shaking hands, though I hadn't consciously decided to do it. I also realized I was still moving, barely crawling, but moving, which may have been the only thing that saved me from stopping completely and simply sitting there, paralyzed, while those eyes held me in place. It watched me pass. That's the thing I keep returning to. It watched me. It could have stepped into the road. It could have done any number of things. Instead, it simply regarded me, those forge-hot eyes tracking my truck with a patience that felt geological, ancient, indifferent. And then, with a smoothness that something its size had no right to possess, it turned and walked into the cedar thicket at the roadside, not crashing through it, not thrashing, moving through the brush as if the brush simply stepped aside to let it pass. And then it was gone. I floored the accelerator and drove for maybe a quarter mile before the adrenaline peaked and my hand started shaking so badly I nearly swerved off the road. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my temples, in my fingertips. My breathing was ragged and shallow. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to keep going, to get home, to lock the door and not think about what I'd just seen. But I didn't keep going. I can't explain this fully except to say that there's something in the human mind that demands confirmation of its own experience, that refuses, at some fundamental level, to accept that it has witnessed something and simply let it go unexamined. Maybe it's courage. More likely it's that specific, maddening brand of stubbornness that gets people killed in horror films. But I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. I needed to go back. I looped around to the next crossroads and drove back, slowly, every nerve in my body vibrating. The road was empty. The sign stood there in my headlights, completely ordinary, completely innocent. The yellow placard reading 40 miles per hour in clean black letters, exactly as it always had. The cedar thicket beside it was still. The air, when I cracked my window just slightly, was cool and smelled of dust and juniper and nothing else. There was no trace that anything had been there. No broken branches. No disturbance. Nothing. Just that sign. Just the road. Just the dark. I didn't sleep well that night. Or for many nights after, truthfully. I kept waking at 2 or 3 in the morning with the image of those eyes burning in my mind, that deep, pulsing, volcanic red, and I'd lie there in the dark of my bedroom feeling the same primal, wordless wrongness I'd felt on that road. Weeks later, after enough time had passed that I could think about it more analytically, I did some research. I looked up the standard height requirements for rural road signage in Texas. 7 feet. Mandatory minimum clearance from the ground to the bottom of the sign. And if this thing's shoulders were at that level, and its head extended above it, we're talking something that stood 9 feet tall at minimum. Possibly 10. For the sake of argument, I tried to think of every rational explanation. A prankster in a costume? On stilts? In the dark, on a deserted back road in a rural county where most households own firearms and have little patience for nonsense? No. Someone disturbed or in crisis. At that height, with those eyes, with that texture? No. Some elaborate Halloween installation? Not in that location. Not without any additional setup, and not something that could simply walk away into the brush. I still draw it sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. I've filled half a sketchbook with versions of that shape, trying to get the proportions right, trying to capture the specific quality of that blackness, the way those eyes glowed. I never quite manage it. The human hand, I think, wasn't designed to render things it truly has no language for. I drive that road still, from time to time. I have to. It's the most direct route between certain places I need to go. But I never drive it at night anymore. And I never drive it without thinking of the 7-foot sign and what stood head and shoulders above it, patient and burning-eyed in the dark, as though it had been waiting there long before I came along and fully intended to be there long after I was gone. I don't know what I saw that night on that road in North Texas. But I know this. Some things exist at the edge of what we understand, at a frontier where the map of the known world simply runs out and the cartographers, honest ones, right here be monsters. Most of us are lucky enough to drive right past that frontier without ever noticing it. I wasn't lucky. And once you've seen something on the other side of that line, once those red eyes have found yours in the dark and held them for even 6 seconds, you never fully come back to the safe, well-lit side of the world again. Part of me is still on that road. Part of me always will be. Thank you for watching Hybrid Shadows. If you experience something you can't explain, something that lives in a part of your mind where logic won't go, share it below. You are not alone in the dark. There are moments in life that the rational mind simply refuses to process, experiences that slip through the cracks of logic and settle somewhere deeper, somewhere darker, where they live permanently, immune to explanation and resistant to time. What I'm about to share is one of those moments. I've turned it over in my mind thousands of times since it happened. I've sketched it in notebooks. I've lost sleep over it. And no matter how many years pass, I cannot make it make sense. This is my story, and I swear on everything I hold dear, every word of it is true. It was late September, pushing into early October, that beautiful, fleeting window in North Texas when the brutal summer finally surrenders and the evenings become something worth stepping outside for. The heat had broken just enough that I'd roll both windows down as I drove, letting the cool night air rush through the cab of my truck. It was maybe 8 o'clock. Not the dead of night, not some witching hour designed for strange things. Just a quiet, ordinary Tuesday evening on a rural backroad I'd driven hundreds of times in my life. I grew up around that stretch of road. I knew every curve, every hill, every crooked fence post. I knew which farms had dogs that would chase you to the county line, and which fields flooded after hard rain. That road was as familiar to me as my own reflection, and that familiarity was part of what made what happened so profoundly unsettling. It didn't happen somewhere unfamiliar and foreign. It happened somewhere I thought I knew completely. The road itself was a winding 2-lane strip of cracked asphalt cutting through flat ranch land and scattered cedar thickets. No streetlights. No houses close enough to matter. Just the twin beams of my headlights carving a pale tunnel through the dark, and the sound of gravel occasionally pinging off the undercarriage when I drifted too close to the shoulder. I was keeping my eyes forward and scanning far down the road, an old habit, honestly a survival instinct you develop out here. Deer will materialize out of nowhere on these back roads, especially at dusk and into the early evening. You learn to look far ahead, to search for that telltale glint of eyes in the headlights before the animal is close enough to cause a problem. It's not paranoia. It's just how you drive out here if you want to keep your front end intact. That's how I first spotted it. Something at the edge of my high beams, maybe 200 yards out. A shape, a presence. Something that caught the light in a way that made me lean slightly forward in my seat, narrowing my eyes. Probably a speed limit sign, I told myself. There was one along that stretch, a yellow warning placard on a tall post near a particularly wicked S-curve that had claimed more than a few bumpers over the years. I knew that sign well, but something was in front of it. Something was obscuring it, leaning against it, or standing near it. I couldn't yet tell which. Kids, maybe, I thought, or someone broke down and pulled debris off to the side. Either way, I started easing off the gas. If something was blocking that sign, even partially, on a dark, curvy road like this, it was a genuine hazard. I'd seen how fast people took that curve. Someone could get hurt. 100 yards out now. I could see the sign glinting around the edges of whatever was blocking it, silver reflective tape catching my high beams. The obstruction itself was large, taller than I'd expect for a pile of junk or sheaf of lumber. It had a strange quality to it, a texture that I couldn't name yet but that my eyes kept sliding off of, as if my brain was refusing to commit to what it was seeing. 80 yards. 70. I pressed the brake more firmly, slowing to a crawl. What is that? The texture became more visible as I crept closer. Something dark, something irregular, something that seemed almost layered, like fibers or bristles packed impossibly dense. My mind, desperate for a foothold in familiarity, ran through its catalogue. Fur? A large animal? The shape was certainly large enough. A massive buck could stand that tall, I suppose, but this shape was wrong for a day. Too broad, too upright, too still. A bear? The thought surfaced and immediately sank. There hadn't been bears in that part of Texas for the better part of a century. Mountain lions? Also gone from those lands for decades. Besides, whatever this was, it was dark, unnaturally, almost aggressively dark. In the full sweep of my high beams, it should have caught some light, the way any animal's coat does, a sheen, a gleam, something. But instead, it seemed to swallow my headlights whole. That was the first thing that truly frightened me, before the thing even moved, before I understood what I was looking at. It was a blackness. Not the darkness of shadow, not the natural darkness of the night around it, but an absolute, consuming, impossible black. The surrounding darkness of the Texas night, the kind that feels thick and endless once you're out of town, seemed almost gray by comparison. This thing was darker than the dark itself, blacker than anything I had ever seen or could imagine seeing in my headlights. My truck slowed to nearly a stop. 50 yards. I told myself it was still possible this was something mundane. A Halloween prop, someone's idea of a prank, placed in the worst possible location on a dangerous curve. That thought almost comforted me. But it was fragile, and it shattered completely at around 40 yards, because the thing moved. Not much, at first, just a subtle shift, a repositioning of weight, the kind of micro-movement that separates a living thing from an object. It had been leaning against the speed limit sign. I understood that now, could retroactively see the posture, but it was no longer leaning. It was rising, straightening. It stood up, and it was tall. God, it was tall. The road signpost that I knew to be 7 feet high, the legally mandated minimum clearance for rural signage, a fact I'd learned years later when I looked it up, came to somewhere around the thing's shoulder. Its head and shoulders extended well above it. This was not a person. This was not an animal I had any name for. This was something else entirely. As it rose to its full height, that awful texture became more apparent, more wrong. It wasn't fur. I was certain of that now. Fur has a softness to it, even in silhouette, a kind of organic warmth. This was the opposite. It reminded me of something you might see under a microscope, millions of tiny filaments, like black needles, impossibly fine, covering every surface. Not hair, not feathers, not anything. Just that wrongness, that sense of matter arranged in a way that violated some basic expectation of how matter should behave. And then it turned its head.